Hello, and welcome to lgtm on Cloud Native TV. Hello, and welcome to lgtm. I am your host, David Mackay, also known as Rockwood. Before we begin today, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. First and foremost, please remember that this is an official live stream of the CNCF, and as such is subject to the CNCF's Code of Conduct. Please don't do anything in the chat that would be in violation of that Code of Conduct. Basically, just be nice to everyone, be respectful of myself, my guest, and anyone else in the chat. Also, KubeCon registrations are now open for KubeCon North America 21. You can go to the KubeCon website and register now for as low as, I think, $10 for the virtual or $75 for in-person. Definitely worth checking out early if you're able and safe to travel. Okay, today, this is LGTM. LGTM is the show where we will show you how to contribute to CNCF projects. Today, we're taking a look at Kubectl, 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 I'm sure there's a few more. And in order to do so, I'm joined by the co-chair of SIG CLI, Eddie Zaneski. Hi there, Eddie. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited. This is now episode 3 of LGTM, and people always ask me, how are you going to do Kubernetes? And the question is a great question because it's such a huge project. And I'm really just so excited to understand how myself and others can begin to contribute to Kubectl. Now, before we get started on that very daunting task that you have signed yourself up for, do you want to take a moment to just tell us a little bit about Eddie?
Sure. I'm Eddie. I live out in Denver, Colorado. I work for Amazon Web Services, and I'm on the AWS Kubernetes team, where I spend most of my time focused working upstream. I like climbing and I like kayaking. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Well, I think the best thing for us to do, as Kubectl is going to be a really fun one for us to explore, is to jump straight into our screen sharing mode, and we'll kind of try and break down some of the primitives that people need to be aware of with regards to where does the code live, how do they access it, and what are the major directory structures and changes. So let's pop over to our screen share. There we go. You are now live. We can see the GitHub page. You want to give us the guided tour, please?
All right. So before we get started, I will say that learning the Kubernetes contribution world is a little intimidating. It's just such a big project, and there are so many pieces of this big project, right? So when you're first coming into the community, don't be afraid, don't be scared. There's plenty of people here to help you and get started. Kubernetes project is broken up into different SIGs, or special interest groups as we call them. And so there's a SIG for networking, there's a SIG for the CLI tooling, which is what I work on. And then on the top, we have a SIG for contributor experience. We shorten it to SIG Contribx. And that's the SIG that we recommend a lot of people have their first foray into the Kubernetes community. So it's run by a great group of awesome people. It is a SIG that is focused entirely on the contributors and how to get started and the experience of everyone who's working on the project. So there are people to help you. So don't get scared from everything we're going to run through today. Definitely check out the SIG Contribx, and there's a whole load of other SIGs for different interests for the project. So with that, I guess what I have here is the repo for Kubectl or Kubectl or Kubectl, as you said. I purposefully say it all different ways throughout my conversations just to confuse everybody on purpose. But we have the repo here. And so this is actually kind of a special case because even though Kubectl has its own repo, we don't take pull requests directly to this repo. This is what we call a staging repo. And so inside of the main Kubernetes repository, we have a folder that you'll find called staging. And so this is a collection of repos that are hopefully going to be broken out one day. Again, Kubernetes is such a large code base, so there's pieces everywhere. And so the idea is to break out and separate all the individual components into their own places, so we can permission things differently. We can have different communities engaged in places. The cloud providers are a great example of that, right? So most of the cloud provider code was part of the main Kubernetes repo at one point, and there's been a great effort from a bunch of awesome folks over the years to separate that out into its own repos and its own SIG controlled code. And so if you're ever wondering, oh, like, where does this code live? There's a good chance it's going to live in the staging repo. So this is a great place to start. And so when you take a look here, you'll have the source k8s.io folder. And then, like on the README from the last page, this has all those repos that are considered staging. And so this is actually where we take pull requests. So you would come into the Kubectl subfolder here. You can see this is the same exact code that I had back here. And there's a job that will periodically run that will copy this code, this K8 publishing bot, into the staging repos. So that's one of the first confusing things to learn, is that if it's a staging repo piece of code, you have to make a PR to the main repo and not any of the sub repos. We're very close to being able to build Kubectl out of tree, as we would say, so out of the main repo. There's some great effort from some folks there.
So the goal of the staging directories and the main repository then is that these are projects that are being prepared to be extracted into their own individual repositories and built out a tree. Like that's the whole concept of staging.
That is the theory, yes. I'm not sure some of them will ever make it out, just because there's so many deep couplings, but we will definitely get there eventually, hopefully. So
awesome.
So this is where we take pull requests. And there's a lot to learn about contributing to Kubernetes in general, right? So where do you recommend we start? Should we start walking through issues, or?
Well, yeah. So if we take a look at the kubectl directories, could we just understand, like, because it's a command line application, I'm curious, if anyone's familiar with Go, is it a Cobra Viper application? Does all the same conventions that people may be familiar from there work here? Is it something else? How do they navigate the packages within this directory?
Yeah, great question. So yes, it is a Cobra application. Cobra is a very popular command line tool library for Go. Real easy to get started. And so dropping into the main repo here, you'll see there's no entry point, and that's where we say you can't build Kubectl out of tree yet. The entry point actually lives at the top level here in this command folder. And then we have the Kubectl folder, right? So we have a very simple, straightforward main function. So this is actually how Kubectl gets built. So if you were to do a Go build this, it will actually just build the binary here. So I'll show you how the makefile works in a bit, but this is the actual entry point. And so this will pull in all of that staging code that we have here. And so if we take a look, the Go mod folders, the Go mod file is kind of large, but you can see we're pulling in Cobra. We're probably pulling in Viper. No, not Viper. We're pulling in PF flag. So this is for flag sets and stuff. Bunch of other YAML libraries, tons of the Kubernetes core libraries. We also, if you're working on Kubectl, you'll often run into a CLI runtime library. This is where we've abstracted a lot of the pieces for building CLIs inside of Kubernetes world. So this is used inside of kubeadm, a bunch of other command line tools inside of the Kubernetes project. So CLI runtimes where a lot of that work will actually get done. Kubectl code actually houses most of the commands. So if we jump into that package folder, you will see this layout that you're probably familiar with. We have some top level folders here. Most of the stuff that you want to work on and look at is going to live in this command folder. So these are all of the commands that live inside Kubectl, right? So get is a very common command that most folks will use. See, we have this broken out. So these are all packaged and moduled. And the idea is that a lot of this code is intended to be reusable. We're not quite there yet. We have a function and a pattern that we're working on, and I'll actually shout out an issue later that we have a ton of need for new contributors for. But there are tons of conventions for what a kubectl command looks like. And we have, this is a good one. So see how this takes in a Cobra command itself? There's a big effort right now where we're trying to rewrite most of our code that it doesn't depend on a Cobra command, right? So you should be able to pull in some of these commands and use these as library code for some of the stuff you're working on without having to actually think about CLI or Cobra. So we have a bunch of like different option structs that are get passed in. You can see here, this is like the get option struct, right? So this has all the flags and different bits that you could pass to the get command. A little later, I'll walk through actually making a change to a command. Get's a very complicated command to get started with, especially because it works with what we call unstructured data. And so it has to know how to write. So Go is a very statically typed language, and Kubernetes is a very dynamically API resource-driven type thing. So we have to be able to convert from a very tight schema to a loose schema and back and forth. So there's tons of different conversions and mappings. It is actually one of the areas of the project where I still get confused very often. So recommend you jumping into something else unless you're really interested in that at first.
Lots of interface definitions, I'm sure.
Yes, and so that is one of the very confusing things. So I'm new to Go. Actually, I think you and I joked about this before. I say I'm new to Go. I've been writing Go for maybe 5-6 years now, but my first experience with Go was working on Terraform, which is Ruby. It's Go code written by Ruby developers, and so Kubernetes is Go code written by Java developers, and so it's very different patterns, and there's tons of Go doesn't have generics, right? So there's different ways to do interfaces and abstractions, and you have to type assert something when you get it. You're like, yes, I'm sure that this is actually going to be this type that I think it is. So it gets confusing. So I recommend you learning Go outside of learning Kubernetes if you haven't done it before. I've made that mistake a few times, and I always get burned. But if you know Java coming in, a lot of the patterns might make more sense to you.
Nice. I think Go's getting generics with Go 2, right?
Yes, so yes, we are getting.
We'll have to rewrite Kubernetes from scratch then, won't we? The whole thing, start it again.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure the API machinery folks would not be happy to hear that. Cool. So this is a command, and this is a very large project. So don't be intimidated or scared off from the start. What can I jump into next?
Okay, so they know where the code lives. We now understand the staging stuff, and I'll throw that out there. That was one of the things that always confused me when I looked at the Kubernetes repository. I was like, what is all this staging stuff? So I'm glad that you've answered that. We know that this stuff happens in the commands. You've mentioned it's a Cobra application. So hopefully that's enough for people now that they can feel a little bit of familiarity with this directory and this project. So what about the issues then? If there are conventions there for people to find an easy issue to get started with kubectl?
Yes. And the reason I get stuck is because I feel like you could do an entire episode on how to contribute to Kubernetes as a project, because there's so much automation and tooling and structure put in place. I will show one thing real quick. So we have these code owners files. And so if you're ever working on a piece of code and you're not sure who to talk to, you actually see this in the pull request process. So there will be an owner's file. Either these can be super granular into a single package or a whole top level for the whole repo. But we have owner's files, and these kind of point to who owns these different pieces of code. So you can see here that this particular repo is owned by the 6 CLI maintainers, and they're the approvers. So we have different, we call it the contributor ladder. So we have you can be a outside contributor from the organization. So organization is just the actual GitHub organization. So we welcome contributions from everyone out in the community. You don't have to sign up or apply to do anything. You'll have to sign a CLA when you make your first contribution. But anyone can contribute. And so when a person who is outside of the org makes a pull request, you'll see, here's a good one. So here's a pull request made 36 minutes ago. And you'll see it has this needs OK to test flag on here. And so that just means that this person is a contributor. So this means they have contributed before, but they're not part of the Kubernetes organization. And so we don't run CI jobs by default because Bitcoin mining and abuse and all that fun stuff. But anyone who's a member can come through and say, let's just take a quick peek at this PR. Yep, this doesn't look like it's mining Bitcoin. Doesn't look like it's going to break our CI. So I'll come in here and I'll just drop a /OK to test on here. And so this will tag the PR. You'll see that this label will get removed and OK to test will be added. And then we have a big CI system called Prow. And so the Prow bot is going to run a bunch of jobs in here. And it's going to start doing a whole bunch of testing. So you'll see this will take anywhere from like a few 30 minutes to a couple hours to run, depending on the job. We have, this is a giant job that runs on a GCE cluster. So we run, different tests for different things. You can check out some of these. But this is a big source of confusion for a lot of contributors. It's like, why isn't my code being tested? We try to drop messages in here so you can see, hey, this issue is currently awaiting triage. A SIG can come by and accept this. So it will kind of show up in their queue. You can filter on like accepted or unaccepted issues yet. It just kind of shouts out that like, hey, no one's looked at this. This needs triage. And then it also says, I'm waiting for a Kubernetes member to test this patch, right? So that's what I just did is I came by and I was like, okay, this is okay to test. And it actually calls out, it says, if you are a regular contributor, you should try to join the organization. There's different requirements we have. You have to kind of demonstrate some contribution to the project. So it'll ask you for what issues you've commented on, what PRs you've reviewed or written. Contributions don't always mean code, right? It especially don't always mean code. There's tons of room in the Kubernetes project for PMs, doc writers, right? We need help from everybody. It is a large project that only keeps getting larger. So anyone can come in and contribute. And you can check out how to join the org there. And then your PRs will be automatically tested, right? Last comment that the Prowlbot put on here is this is a pull request has been approved by the author, right? So they're the author, so they've essentially approved it. The pull request process is pretty well documented here. You can check that out. And it tells you, hey, please assign this person after the PR has been reviewed, right? So essentially we have reviewers who get pulled out of those owners files, and they get asked to review the code when it comes out. And so once they've seen, hey, like this code looks good, okay, they'll throw usually a /lgtm, so a name of the show, looks good to me label on here. And then the next step in the process is to assign an approver to come give the final, okay, this looks good from a broader picture of the project. Yes, we want this as part of the Kubernetes project. And so it'll usually tell you this needs approval from an approver in this owner file. And so we'll take a look at the Kubectl owners file. You'll see like here are the approvers for that file, right? So these kind of just get picked round robin style. The bot will just grab someone out of here and request them to do something. The tooling built around the project is immense, right? There is so much tooling built around the Kubernetes project. That is a source of need for contribution in general, is just people to work on the tooling that supports the project, right? Let alone making features on the project. Where'd my pull request go? There's also there's a big template that you'll fill out when you make this PR. And one of the big pieces in here is a release notes section. And so is where the release note does this introduce a user-facing change, right? And so am I here?
Yeah. Sorry, you dropped out briefly there, but you seem to be okay now.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with the internet today. I have a gigabit line, so I'm feeling sad.
All right. I think, it seems okay just now. Hopefully that was just a wee blip and we can move past it.
Okay. So there's the release note. So there's just tons involved, right? So don't get scared away when you're making your first PR. And so I guess we could zoom back out so we can actually look at some of the issues, which you can see we have tons of open issues, even more closed issues. We recently, it's not even recently anymore, but we hit our 100,000th issue back in, I think, December, and we're already up another, 30,000. So the project moves very, very quickly. And so if you come through here, you'll see, if we just go to open an issue, for example, I'll get prompted. This is very familiar if you saw Containerd's episode last week. We have different templates for different things.
Yep.
So if you have a bug report to file, you can come fill out the template. Don't be that person who just Control A's and deletes the template and puts in what they want here. We have these templates for a reason, especially the version stuff. Give us as much information as you can when you're filing a bug report. I want to know your OS version, your server version, your Kubectl version, just anything you think that we could use to help reproduce the issue.
Yeah, it's so important.
More,
it's going to save all that back and forward where the contributors, the maintainers who are already short on time are just going to have to spend time communicating, sending messages back and back. As much as you can jam in there up front is always a good idea, regardless of how big the project is.
Yeah. So please don't delete the template, and please provide as much info as you can. We also, you'll hear, especially if you report Kubectl issues, we have a version skew policy, and this gets referenced very often. There is currently 3 supported versions of Kubernetes, right? 121, 120, and 119. And we also support patch versions for the one past that for a little bit longer. And there's a version skew for different components of the project. So we'll come to Kubectl here. So kubectl will work with a one miner above and below. So if your API server is at 121, that means your version of Kubectl that is 121 will work with 122 and 120. That's not to say it's not going to work, but there are different skews and shifts and changes that happen that we can't support a brand new client that's working on a 115 version of the API server, right? Like those things aren't going to work. So that's another piece that if you're opening an issue and you're using a version that's out of skew, what usually the first question we're going to ask is, hey, could you please reproduce this with a supported version? And we'll link right to this policy here. And that just saves a bunch of time too. So don't take it offensive that we're not shaming you for running an old version of Kubernetes, but these things are meant to be used in the same version within a range. So
yeah,
that's like number 2 thing we point out. Cool. So this is filing an issue. And like I said, there's different types in here. So give us as much information as you can. And so when you file a bug report, it will get a whole bunch of labels thrown on it. So here's one that was filed 44 minutes ago and 3 hours ago. So this is a issue. I'm not going to read it, but it will, the bot will come by and it will, okay, so someone actually, Dashpool came in here and actually assigned SIGs to it, right? So we have tons of different labels and commands and all these pieces. That can all be seen in the Prow help page, which I will drop in the chat. This is all of the commands that you can interact with the Prow bot on an issue or a pull request. We operate on a principle of least privilege and permissions. So most people don't have I don't have write access to the Kubernetes repo. Tons of people don't have write access. It's mostly only the people who've been working on the project for a very long time have write access. And so we interact with the bot via commands. And so even someone who, a new contributor can use a lot of these commands. It'll tell you who can use them, right? So we got a couple in here. What's a good one? Honk, right? So this drops a goose image on the PR. It's a fun one to play with. But we have some more practical ones like a label, right? So here you can say this kind of issue is a bug, right? Or this kind of issue is a feature request. The template will kind of do that for you. It'll set some of those, but sometimes we'll have to relabel them with kind. Same thing with area, right? So like it'll label /area Kubectl or something. It'll also, the bot will do a good job trying to predict and guess, especially in PRs, which files were touched, which means which SIGs have to be applied when those files are touched. So we'll often not be able to do that for issues because it doesn't really know which files are going to be touched for this issue. And so people will come in, and we have lots of folks, especially these. There's no label right now that says need sig. This one, oh, it does. Here you go. Need sig, right? So this issue is a need sig issue. So YAML separator. So this is probably a maybe SIG CLI or API machinery. But the bot will ask you, hey, this issue needs a SIG. There are no labels on this issue. Please add an appropriate label, right? So a good way to get involved with contributions is to come in here and not so much stir up noise, but if you can help triage these issues, especially the ones that say need triage or need SIG, if you can come in and say like, oh, this sounds like a network issue, right? And you can /SIG networking. That is a great way to start contributing and learning different parts of the code base and different pieces, right? So there's tons that you can see. All of these need triage, right? These are 19 hours ago, 20 hours ago, yesterday. You don't have to contribute code. You can come in and just help us label issues. So great place to get started as well. And okay, so that's opening an issue. That's interacting with the Prowlbot. I go through here all the time. I don't remember any of the commands. There are some I use more than others. The label ones we use a ton. And if you don't know any of the labels, you can always look in the drop downs here. I'll come in, especially the triage labels, because there's so many. So I'll come in and be like, oh, this is a needs information or unresolved or not producible, right? So you can just kind of search the label. You can search the kinds in here. Do this often. At the same time, if you're interested in contributing to SIG CLI, right, you can come in here and say SIG CLI, sort by an issue. So we'll filter on just SIG CLI issues. And you can, filter on needs triage. There are labels for help wanted and good first issue. Those generally get snatched up very, very quickly. Lots of folks are kind of looking for those or watching for those. If you come into any of the SIG channels and say, hey, I'm a new contributor, I'm looking for an issue regarding this. Some folks might have some off the top of their head they can point you to, especially ones that have been open for a bit. But yeah, so you can come in here, do some filtering, and kind of look for, let's see, are there any help wanted issues? There might be a couple. Yeah, there's a couple. Some of these that are open I imagine are more complicated than getting started. So
yeah, and I think one of the things I always do is look at the comment count on those issues and see, do I really want to get involved in something that's quite noisy?
Yeah, that is a good thing to look for. Right, so different ways to get looking. I mentioned we have a open issue in Kubectl. Oh, so this is another source of confusion. So we take issues for Kubectl inside of the Kubernetes repo, but we also source them inside of the Kubectl repo, right? So we actually have a dashboard that we like to go through. This is in the process of being moved to a more project-owned piece of infrastructure. I kind of just run this right now on my personal account. But this is like our triage party. This is made by Thomas Stromberg from Google. I hope I got the last name.
Equinix Metal.
But this is Equinix Metal. That's awesome.
Yeah, he joined us very recently. Very excited to have him.
Oh, that's great. Thomas is great. He's always helped me when I need help with this. But yeah, so this is a tool made by him originally, and it's an open source tool. It's just called Triage Party. And so you can use a bunch of different YAML filters to pull in issues and pull requests based on different tags and rules and whatever you want, right? So here we have old issues that need triage still in here, Kubernetes issues, that need old issues that need triage. We try to do a good job of like walking at least new issues, because that's always been my philosophy, is if we can keep things clean on the front and slowly work our way backwards, usually the new issues are going to be a little more relevant than older issues. So that's usually where we spend time, is like trying to keep the new queue clean, and then that lets us walk through the old backlog. So just tons of stuff in here. Here's PRs that need triage, old PRs that need triage. We also have another tool called Gubernator that here's all the issues that I need to actually act and put attention on. So this bot, this tool OAuths with GitHub. Oops, I'm zooming on the wrong window. This OAuth's with GitHub based on your username, and it will kind of show you all the things that you need to, act on. Here are some needs attention incoming PRs, issues that I need to look at. I have 2 outgoing PRs that still need to be done something with at some point. It has an action status. I got to rebase this one. So there's tons of different tools. All of these can be found throughout many different documentation pages. We have a Kubernetes contributors website. So that is a great source of information. This photo I love this photo. This is from the last in-person contributor summit in San Diego at KubeCon. So you can see me chilling in the back here, very tall. And so you can look at the documentation for this. There's also the developer guide, which is, I have it open in a tab somewhere. I had many tabs open. It lives in the community repo, Kubernetes Devel Guide. There you go. All right, so if you ever want to find it, you can just search that. And so this has different SIGs have different pieces. There's a good top-level overview. The testing piece is good. Testing in Kubernetes, you could also do an entire session on how to write unit tests, end-to-end test, all those different things. So you can come through here. It tells you how to test your code. So check the docs. There's usually something everywhere. The Kubernetes org is very large. We have lots of projects, and we have multiple orgs. So the ones that you're going to interact with the most are probably the actual Kubernetes repo. Yep. The enhancements repo. So this is where we track Kubernetes enhancements proposals, or KEPs. This is basically anything that is going to be a substantial change to the project has to go through a proposal process. This is a whole sub-project and has many pieces to it itself. But you can come in here, you can look at some of the open KEPs that are being proposed for upcoming features or current features that need to be changed. Great place to look as well for roadmap and different items. Community, so that's where a lot of that documentation lives, where the SIGs are all documented. So if you look at SIG CLI here, you'll see this is our SIG page. So here's the meetings that we have. Most SIGs have a bi-weekly meeting where they'll talk SIG items. It's open, anyone can join. There's no invitation, just completely please show up, introduce yourself. Usually every SIG at the very start has a call out for if this is your first time, please say hi. You can look at past meeting recordings. We have chairs and tech leads. So these are the chairs for the SIG CLI. Here's the tech leads for SIG CLI, right? So tons of stuff in here. Okay, I can go on for a long time. There's tons of documentation. Here's all the sub-projects we own, right? And this is just one SIG. So again, don't get intimidated. Just find an area of interest. Start with SIG contributor experience. Join us in Slack. The Kubernetes Slack is super active.
Yep.
Okay. So code.
Yes. Well, we're kind of roughly at the halfway mark. So I'm going to run through a few comments and then we'll jump into your terminal and we'll tackle building and testing Kubectl. So we got some comments from Soya Pete, who says the proposal for generics was accepted and will come before go-to. Didn't know that. Nice to know. Thank you very much. Verma Canal has asked, I joined a little bit late. Can you please repeat the previous things? Well, there's been a fair bit by now. I think at the point your comment came in, all you had missed was that Eddie broke down the staging and what that means for the project. The staging repository, or the staging directory in the main repository, is for projects that may eventually be removed into their own repository. And I believe some or all of them already have their own repository, where they're working on building out of tree. Eddie promised that would work for Kubectl by tomorrow. No pressure, mate. We got a few of your comments have come through as stars, Eddie. I have tried to kind of fill in the ones I think I know the URL for, but maybe I'll look back with you later. I'm not sure if that's a moderation thing, but we'll work on that.
Oh.
So Pete is asking about Thanos. Join Pop in about 90 minutes from now, who will be joined by Bartlome from the Thanos project. So that'll be a good episode for you. That is on Spotlight. Somoni is asking, are there video tutorials on how to build Kubernetes? Well, you're about to see us build a part of Kubernetes. There are many, many, many parts. So hopefully what we show you with Kubectl will be relevant and helpful for other components. And we will have episodes in the future where we tackle other parts of that as well. Verma Canal asks, if a person is already working on an issue and we want to contribute to the same issue, is there a procedure or protocol to follow there? I'll pass that to Eddie.
If someone else, so that is a source of contention often. So anyone can come by and assign themselves to an issue. So I have the issue that we're going to work on here. So this is a Kubectl get events watch prints old events after some time, right? So this is an issue that's been open for a little bit. I came through here and I saw, okay, I'm going to assign this to myself because I'm going to work on this on stream. It looks like a simple fix, right? So anyone can come by and /assign themselves to an issue. That does not really mean much in terms of like claiming or ownership. If someone's already assigned, it's good practice and habit to be like, hey, I just want to check that you're still working on this. If not, I'd like to take a stab at it. But also don't be surprised if you assign yourself to an issue and a week or 2 weeks go by and someone else comes along, assigns themselves, and puts up a pull request right away. Right? It happens. It's nothing personal. It's just the project moves so quickly and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So sometimes that happens. So don't think that assigning an issue means that you're the only one who's going to work on it. So if you want to grab something, it's good to try to focus on it then. But like I said, just ask the current assignee or author, like, hey, is it okay if I work on this?
Yeah, great advice. Okay, we are all caught up on the comments. We are looking at an issue you have prepared for us. What are we working on then?
Real quick. So if you look on YouTube for new contributor workshop Kubernetes, we have a contributor summit that we do, and most of these are recorded. So there's tons of basically what I did in more depth, walking through how to build. So check some of this content out. It's great, and a lot of it should be on the community GitHub as well. So new contributor workshop. So our issue is Kubectl get events -watch prints old events after some time. And so the events are created inside of Kubernetes. They're kind of just written as a thing that happened. So a pod was set to started or something, right? Events are only kept around for 60 minutes. And then they are garbage collected by one of the controllers. And that's just to clean up, right? So if I come in here and let me see, I have I'm talking to my correct cluster. So I can do kubectl get events all namespaces --watch. So the first thing that's going to happen is this is going to pull a bunch of backdated events that already exist. So it's kind of just going to dump me what's already in the queue. You'll see some of these are approaching that 60-minute mark. And if I leave this open for a bit, which I meant to do before we started, you would see, here you go. Look, some just got deleted right now. Perfect. All right, so these 61-minute-old, these are events that are getting deleted, but it doesn't actually call that out in the code for us, right? So the output isn't very clear that these are deleted events. So this is what that issue is calling out. I don't think that the deleted events should be shown here. I don't think that they're useful to the user or actionable. So my proposed solution to this is just going to not print out an event if it's deleted. And so that's what we're going to code up real quickly. We'll get to touch a command, add a flag, and see what happens. So I don't know if this is the solution we're going to go with, but it's quick and easy to pump out, so we'll see. And so I'll leave that open in the background. I'm just in my Kubernetes repo that's cloned down here. This is just the same repo. And so I just have a shortcut. So if I do KK for Kubernetes, and then kubectl, it'll take me to that staging repo. A lot of people have different aliases for different things. And so I know where this code lives already, but let's fire it up in Vim, and we'll take a look at the structure here, right? So this is the get code, and it's the events code. And so if I come back into where we saw under package, command, under get, and then we look in get.go, we'll see a big file. This file is really big. It's got a ton of different things in here. And so what I'm looking for is watch, right? So watch is a Kubernetes, it's almost like an API verb, like a get, post, whatever. So you can watch a resource and it will kind of do a long poll type stream, new things that come towards you. So I'm just going to look for watch. So here's that watch flag, right? So Cobra and kubectl commands quick look at the structure, right? So this is the new command get. This is going to actually create the command for get. It will take in that parent, a factory. So this is, again, just tons of abstractions and libraries. IO streams are just going to be standard in, standard out, right? This is just dependency injection so we can test it better. And this will actually return a Cobra command. So Cobra command is just going to be a struct in Go. And it has, the use, all these bits, right? So if you haven't used Cobra before, very straightforward. We have a pattern here that I was talking about. We have complete, validate, and run steps. So the idea is that these can be called independently and separately. So complete will kind of set up the flag struct and make sure it's where it needs. Validate, make sure everything's in place to run the command, and run will actually run the command and perform that action. So this lets us break a command into different pieces. Here's those flags that I mentioned. So we have a command flags, and then all the flags that you can pass on get, right? So I'm going to add a flag real quick. And so I'm going to add a flag that's just going to say, I want to include errors, right? So by default, this will be, let's see how we can do this. So we'll say, I want a bool flag. It's going to be gotta add a field to this struct. So let's just say we want to include, we'll call it include watch errors or something. All right, I'll just call that a bool. So then I can come back to the flag and say, yes, I want to set this up as a flag. So Cobra takes care of parsing these command line values for us. It takes care of all of that jazz. It's a great library. So I'm just going to give it a pointer to the field in that struct that I want it to set the value into. And we'll call this include watch errors. And then shorthand, we're not going to give it anything. Value, we're going to default this to false. And usage, this is just will get printed out if you do a help. So we'll say include events are deleted every 60 minutes. This will include delete events on watch or something, right? I'll clean that up later. Okay. Boom. So there, we've added a flag. So this will add that -- include watch event. We'll say include, no, I don't like that actually. Include delete events. That's what we want. Include delete events. That. Include delete events. Include delete events. Okay. All right. And so it'll say -- include delete events. And so I know where this code lives for watch. So I'm just going to, again, keep searching down for watch. And this is it. So this is the actual watch command. You could trace this throughout the function and find out where this gets called. And then again, get is a very confusing command to get started in, especially anything that has to print out to a table, as we call it. We have different types of writers. So when I see, here we go. So here's the watcher. So this is actually what's going to run. So this watcher gets created. It's going to watch for resource version changes on a certain resource ID that we grab. And then here's where this event gets created and where it gets printed, right? So this is printer, print object. Okay. So inside of this, until, without, retry. So there's tons of helper utilities throughout the code base. I often find myself stumbling on ones that I didn't even know existed. It's like, oh, like I don't have to, write a loop to watch or retry or something. So all we're going to do here is we're just going to check if the include delete events flag is set, and this event that comes in, right? So I get this event, this watch event called E. So if I say e.type equals, and I think we can just do watch tools dot, maybe it's watch dot deleted. There we go. So this is just a, you think of it like an enum actually. It's just a hard-coded deleted string. So if the event type comes in as deleted, and you have Well, actually, let's think through our logic, right? So if include delete events is set, so if it's not set and the event type is deleted, then I just want to skip and not print this out, right? So will return false, which says that this should run again, and there's no error. So I will just return that. So if the flag is not set and the watch event is a delete, I don't want to print this out. Boom. So that's it. So if I save that, print this out. If I go back to the root directory of my repo, kill this to hopefully free up some resources. And if I run make kubectl, there's a make target for kubectl. There's also a bunch of other ways to build it. Like I said earlier, you can do go build. Just use the make target. It's easier. This is going to build all the prereqs as well. I've already got them compiled to save time. So there's, it has to, Go uses a ton of code generation just as a language, and the Kubernetes project makes use of that heavily. So we generate code based on comments and other things. And so this make target will generate a bunch of API types and other structs, and then it will build kubectl. So it's going to take a minute. I don't have the output. That's okay. So we'll just wait for this to go. First compile will take a long time. Especially if you haven't built anything before. This should run really quick. And while that's going, this is going to put that target out into a _output directory inside the bin folder, and then kubectl. So it looks like it worked. So here we have our, I'm just going to find the command. There we go. So if I say run this again, so this is the kubectl version we built. And if we left this open for a bit of time, we would see that no delete events are going to be printed out. So we have potentially fixed this issue. So here are new ones where something's getting created. But we will not see any of those 60-minute-old ones, right? So cool. So I've made my contribution. I'm going to run the unit test real quick to make sure I didn't break anything. This isn't really a change that we can test, unfortunately. Some commands have good testing suites. Get is a very complicated command that does not have a very intricate testing suite. You can go convention is you name the file _test is to find where the tests are. So there's a couple command tests in here. Definitely not one that I can easily plug into for this, though I will try later. But I'm going to run them anyway, just to make sure I didn't break anything. And so to run the tests, I can say, hey, make test, and then I can pass this what equals, and I can give it a path to my module that I want to test. So in this case, I want to test inside of staging source, kubectl package get command, and then in Go to 3 dots just says everything in this subdirectory and below it. It's important you have to include this // here, or else it will look inside of your Go path and you'll be very confused about the error messages. So just always, whenever you're doing anything local in Go, just remember you have to do // And so if we run this, it's going to run those tests. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but that's the general idea, is this is going to build those tests and we'll run them. And I didn't change anything, so hopefully they're not going to fail. In the meantime, let's go and commit these changes. So I'm doing a git checkout -b for a new branch. There's really no convention for branch naming in the project for your personal fork. Everyone forks the repo and makes commits to their own repo, and then you PR the actual upstream. So I'll just say we'll call this easy kubectl, whatever the issue number is, 704. Easy for my initials. I have a branch checked out. Let's look at a diff. Delete event. Yep, that looks good to me. I'm going to add that and commit it. My terminal is not happy right now.
It is running some heavy-duty tests, I would imagine. So,
yeah. All right, so I've added that. I'm going to commit. Just like with containerd, you should sign your commits. And so if you put the -s on the commit sign, it will add that line for you. And I always like to commit with -v. And that's just a verbose commit. So it'll show me the diff while I'm typing the error message. I mean, the commit message. So I will just say add include errors, include delete events or kubectl get watch or something, right? And then I could type up a better, sub commit message in here. For the sake of time, I will just commit this. I'm going to push that up. I'll push that to my fork, which is at origin. And then just like last week, I always come in and just let GitHub suggest the PR for me. So I'm just going to wait here and we'll refresh a few times. It takes a lot longer on the Kubernetes repo than it does other repos just because of the sheer size and scale. So we'll give it a couple of refreshes. It'll show up eventually.
Maybe.
It will. It might just take a little bit. So I'll do this in the meantime. And so I'm going to compare from, let's see.
You'll have to click compare across forks first.
Thank you. You've done this before. Oh, there we go. Okay, so compare and pull requests. Save me from embarrassing myself. And so I'm just going to tag this issue as a work in progress because this PR is a work in progress, and the bot won't merge it or do anything until we mark it as okay to test. And so you can see here this huge template that we need to fill out. So you should read through all this. I know what it says, so I'm just going to select all and delete it for now. This is a kind bug fix. So I will pick /kind bug fix. All right, so read through this whole template. What does this PR do and why do we need it? So I would type out a very detailed message that's like, this PR introduces, or normally I would actually give some backstory. So watch events, Kubernetes events, lit last 60 minutes, and then are deleted. These delete events. These deletes also trigger events when watching, right? So I'd give some backstory so my reviewer knows what's going on. And then I would say this PR introduces a new flag, and I would say why I think this is the right fix. Which issue number does this fix? So here we would say this fixes, I'll just grab a link to this because it's cross repo. Cross repo. So I'll paste that in here and it will format it correctly. And this basically just says GitHub knows to close this issue once this gets merged. Special notes for your reviewer. So here you could take out, I'm not sure, about this test case or something, right? So this is just a call out for your reviewer. This is that release note thing. So this is pretty important. So this does have a release note. So I would say, I'll leave it blank for now so the bot reminds me to do it. But I would write a release note that would show up in the changelog. So add a new include delete events flag for get watch, blah, 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 blah. Any other supporting documentation you want to link to, I don't have anything, so I'll just leave that there. And that's it. So this is, with more content in here, this would be my pull request. I'm going to mark this as a draft pull request as well. And that's it. So I've made my PR. All those issues and labels are going to get tagged on here in real time. You'll see GitHub now actually shows the linked issues, which is pretty great. Bot's going to want to do a bunch of stuff. It'll start testing because I am an org member. And that's it. So bot will report back at some time like, hey, your test failed or passed. We do have a bunch of flaky tests in the project that we've been, very vehemently trying to weed out. So if your tests fail and it spits out all of these things failed, it's probably not from your code. It's, testing distributed systems is hard. And so maybe it's a timeout in the test cluster or something. So it'll give you instructions to rerun the test. You can check the output to make sure that that's actually what happened. So that is it in a nutshell.
Damn, that was impressive. You got a lot, and I mean a lot of information across there in an hour. I am super impressed. But I need to mention one thing. Like I feel like for the last hour, this was almost a pair programming session, and you left me out the commits. I didn't even get a co-author attribute. I mean, that hurt, Eddie. But I really do appreciate you taking the time today to, there was just so much information. You explained the staging, you explained the repositories, we went through the issues, you even fixed a real issue that you had in your queue, which is a nice, interesting one that exposes people to how the code is structured, how the flags are working. And then we got the PR. You went through the template. Like, that's just so much information. And I really do believe that people will find this invaluable. And I really hope that this becomes almost a de facto resource for people that want to contribute to Kubectl. So thank you for spending the last hour with me and sharing all of that knowledge with everybody.
Yeah, again, thanks for being here. Happy to come back whenever. But like I said, you could do an entire episode on just testing and Kubernetes and Prow, and it is a very large project, and we need lots of help. So please come help.
Yeah, I love what you said as well at the start, which I think I would just reiterate before we finish ever, but 30 seconds to a minute out. So, not all contributions do have to be code. Kubernetes is such a huge project. There is a lot of work to be done across many, many disciplines. So even if you don't want to write code, reach out on the Slack channels. There'll be loads of people there willing to help and get you started. All right, Eddie, thank you again. It was an absolute pleasure. Have a wonderful day, and I'll reach out to you, and maybe we'll do a part 2. I think we've got lots more we could do, and I think your ability to share that knowledge in such an articulate way with people is invaluable. So thank you very much, mate. Have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.